Hi, everyone. Good afternoon to you. Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. My name is Dwight Maxwell, and I'm the author of It's Not Just About Grades, It's About Culture. And today I'm doing a little recording from my book. I want to do a little read from a book, a bit of a little extract from this book. Uh, this book has over 340 pages in it, and it's a research that I've compiled over the years as a teacher in the British and American school systems. I've taught on two different continents for the last 25 years, and this book is a culmination of my experience in those two places in the United States and in the UK, but primarily looking at the achievement and attainment of Black children in particular. And the reason why I've taken on this project is primarily because for the last 60 years or so, let's say since 1965, the civil rights movement in America, and in the 1950s, Windrush generation in Britain, there hasn't really been any significant improvement when it comes to the achievement of young Black children in these countries, right? Compared to Asians, South Asians and East Asians, and that would be your South Asians would be your Indians from the Indian continent, and of course you would have your your Chinese and so on coming from East Asia. So these two groups are performing very well, including whites. Whites are doing well as well in these two countries that I've mentioned. However, African American students have been achieving around the same level since they've integrated into the Western school system in America. And similarly, Black children have been at the bottom of the attainment gap next to poor white working class children. In America, it would be similar. Poor whites are achieving at the lowest level. Um, Now, what I'm looking at in my book is what are some of the causation or factors that have impacted on the learning of Black children? Why isn't there a more equal, why aren't we at a more equal level? Why aren't all students achieving the same, regardless of racial background and ethnicity? So these are some of the things that I'm looking at in my book, and I've done extensive research on this. So this book is in response to Amy Chow's Battle Hymn of a Tiger Mom, and her second book with her husband, The Triple Package, which talks about and give reasons and scholarly research on why Asian Americans do so well in comparison to, say, white Americans and Black Americans. Okay, so in my book, I explore this topic, but I'm coming from the point of view of culture. I'm looking at how culture impacts and influence students' learning across the board. And from my research, I've discovered that one of the reasons why African Caribbean and African American students don't do as well as Asian Americans, and whether they're from East Asia or from South Asia, is primarily because of the different ways that how culture is processed in these other in these groups. Okay, so we can look at Asian Americans' achievement, and we can look at uh, white American achievement and Black American achievement. But one of the number one thing that we've seen consistently over the last 300 years or so is this persistent attack upon Black culture. And we have to now take that in consideration. How has this persistent attack upon Black culture, not Asian culture, not white culture, but Black culture, and this is primarily executed by white colonial power structures white settler colonialist ideas and ideology that are still present today, which is manifested in the form of white supremacy, as we see what's going on in the United States. In Florida, for example, the curriculum has been tweaked to remove Black history from it and to include curriculum developed by white males about the benefits of slavery, which is so brazenly racist and so brazenly unethical, yet they are putting this in the curriculum. It's like saying, what are some of the benefits of human trafficking, right? It's utterly ridiculous, okay? But this is the type of approach that is taken when it comes to Black children, all right? No other racial group is experiencing a removal from the curriculum as Black people have, regardless of what we have been through: Jim Crow segregation, affirmative action, uh, enslavement, terrorism. It doesn't matter what we've been through over the years, the white power structure have consistently created systems to disenfranchise Black groups, Black children in particular. When we look at the schools in Black communities, they are underperforming, partially because of lack of resources. They don't have the same access to resources as more affluent schools in predominantly white and Asian communities, where the property taxes are higher. Okay, so we have to look at that. One of the biggest components of this, of course, is the breakdown of the family structure within the Black community over time as a result of enslavement and Jim Crow segregation and redlining, whether that's with economic redlining, social redlining, apartheid systems that have been put in place. And if we were to look at the current situation, Black people have really just come out of this sort of system of oppressive apartheid system for the last 50 years or so in both of these countries. All right. So we're looking at the last 50 years and what has happened during that time in terms of the learning of Black children, which we have to take seriously, right? Black children could be students could be contributing a lot more to society if we would look at their intersectionality and take that into consideration when planning our curriculum and when we have these students in our schools to have special programs that can address their unique needs. All right. But what we often see is an attack upon these children by the system. It's always been an attack on them, regardless of the intersectionality. Okay. So there's so many things that we can go into today. But one of the things I want to talk about is the Adinkra symbol, because I've introduced Adinkra symbols as teaching tools and that we can incorporate into the Western school system that would enhance the learning of Black children for many reasons. In particular, a number one reason would be the fact that Adinkra symbols are coming from an African philosophical perspective. And when we introduce this concept to our children, it will boost their self-esteem to know that African philosophy is on the same level as Western philosophy, right? In fact, African philosophy came before Westerners even thought of philosophy. And we're going by history. This is not opinion. It's not about feelings and emotions. We're talking about what is actually going on, what happened historically. And this is why we cannot ignore history. The falsification of history and the rewriting of history that has taken place during colonialism and during imperialism of the European imperialism and so on, and Arab incursion upon Africa. Let's not forget Arab, distortion of Black history as well, and the dehumanization of Africans by these groups that have systematically kept and created a negative portrayal and representation of people of of African descent. So let's take, for example, chapter 4, Adinkra symbols, the key to unlocking your child's potential. Now, if you're a parent, whether you're black or white, if you're a white parent, you might want to know more about Black history and culture and how and what are some of the negative stereotypes and portrayal of Black people and where did these come from? For example, we know that Black people are excellent inventors. A lot of the things we take for granted that we use on a daily basis was invented by research conducted by Black people, whether we invented it ourselves or whether our research contributed to it. This is a well-known fact. Yet in Silicon Valley, Black people make up a very small minority of the population of such institutions, of organizations like Silicon Valley, where the majority is Asians and whites. Okay, so we have to take these factors into consideration. It doesn't add up. Okay, so I'm going to read a short extract from this chapter 4, Adinkra symbols, the key to unlocking your child's potential. I am just going to jump in the middle. I'm going to give you a little bit from the opening of the chapter, and then I'm going to jump to some of the key points that I want to mention. Okay, hope I'm not losing you so far. If you want to know more about my work, you can go to culturetransforms.com and put your details in, and we can stay in touch, whether you want curriculum ideas or whether you want a copy of the book or you want me to come into your school or organization to do a talk. It will be my honor to do so. Okay, let's take a look at this chapter. So this chapter, you can see that's the Duen Menen symbol, okay? And that's the symbol in the Adinkra symbol, which all Adinkra symbols are defined in my book. And the Duen Mien is basically two horns clashing, right? It doesn't represent violence, but it definitely represents upheaval and transformation, okay? So we want to look, this chapter is not about Duen Mien, but there's a Duen Mien symbol on the chapter, just to, give the reader a sense of what we'll be talking about during this chapter. In the enchanting exploration that lies ahead, I beckon your attention to a collection of 11 Adinkra symbols, each possessing a latent power I ardently believe can transfigure not just the lives of children universally, but hold particular resonance for the young Black minds striving to find their place. These symbols, akin to both the ethereal and empirical, are akin to mystical ciphers that orchestrate an inner metamorphosis, a profound change that ripples outwards. In theoretical physics, Adinkra symbols are mathematical in nature and are also described as error-correcting codes, as they are supersymmetrical in nature. Within the delicate tapestry of these symbols, a mosaic emerges, one that intertwines the spiritual and the scientific threads that have woven their way through centuries to converge at this pivotal juncture. It is as if these symbols are guardians of a realm waiting to illuminate the path to transformation. Now, as you can see behind me, these are some of the symbols that I'm talking about. That's Denkiem over there, and we have Akoben, and then behind me we have Sankofa. And as you can see in this image, I have children playing with these symbols because that is the whole point of it. These symbols carry loads of meaning and symbolic representations, allegorical meanings, metaphorical meanings. There are proverbs embedded in them, and so on. All right. It also gives a child a chance to learn a new language, an African language, for a change. Okay. I mean, the centuries have gone on where African intelligence, African philosophy, African teachings have been undermined by the West. for no good reason than a psychotic belief that they are superior. And to this day, Western society has not been able to prove that they are superior. Okay, what does superiority mean? And how have you proven yourself to be superiority? Are you talking about moral superiority, intellectual superiority? Because we haven't seen any of this coming through the Western society. In fact, we've seen the opposite: wars and destruction, and concentration camps, genocide. And I mean, is that superiority? Is that civilization? And these are the topics that we've raised with our children. These are the topics that we want to explore in more depth. And this is what we want to bring to the forefront, what Africa has to offer. I'm not saying Africans are perfect. I'm not romanticizing them. But I know that from their ancient culture, from African cultures over the years, just like every other culture, has something to offer. And we are digging deep into African philosophy and culture to see what we can glean and pass on to our children, right? So everyone can learn from these symbols, not just Black people, right? But the importance of bringing this into our children, our students, or of African descent, whether they're from the Caribbean or they're from the Americas or they're from Europe or they're on the continent, it's about empowerment. It's about restoring what has been lost. And it's about building self-esteem, and it's about motivation and encouragement, because these are the factors that impact on achievement and attainment. All right. So like if you agree with me, okay, and share this video with others. Okay. Now, so that's then an intro. Let me give you a bit of about the origins of Adinkra symbols. We know that they come from the Gaiaman people, and the Gaiaman king invented them. I'm sure it was the priesthood and the leaders of that society that contributed to the invention and creation of these symbols. African languages are the word I'm going to use is pictographic. They are pictographic. They are idiomatic as well, right? And these are ideograms, okay? Ideograms mean they are writings that are symbols as well. So it's like, the African culture has always used writing not just as a way of communication, but a way of teaching, and it's symbolic in a sense. Writing was philosophical for Africans and spiritual. So, you look at Hebrew, the Hebrew language, it's the same thing. It is philosophical and spiritual. And the writing, each letter has a symbolic meaning and is connected to the divine. And that is the same thing that we're expressing when we look at Adinkra symbols. So, as mentioned earlier, the Adinkra symbols originate from a long tradition that marks the unification of two ancient kingdoms, the Ashanti and the Gaiaman. The symbols were incorporated into the Ashanti kingdom after a war between the two neighbors, which was sparked by the hubris of the king of the Gaiaman, okay, who attempted to copy the golden stool. So we have a history behind these symbols. Now, when you're teaching these symbols to young people, of course, the history is going to come up. And this is how you broaden their horizon. I mean, it is so beautiful that you can bring this to young people. So far, what Black children are learning in the Western school system is Eurocentric values, Eurocentric culture, the culture of Europe, the culture of white settler colonialism. They're not learning anything about themselves except that they were slaves. And this is far from the truth, okay? This is only a small fraction of African history. And we have to emphasize this so that Black children can understand that slavery came about as a result of war and terror and invasion and colonialism. And all these things occurred. And as a result, Africans were torn away from their culture and their environment. Okay? So it is uh, a very multifaceted issue, but we have to talk about it and we have to empower our children and allow them to, absorb and learn from these philosophies and empower themselves. As Malcolm Gladwell explored in Outlier, cultural legacies have deep roots and long lives and play such a role in directing attitudes and behavior that we cannot make sense of our world without them, right? So, cultural legacies are vital to our survival. It's like, for instance, imagine someone who has amnesia, gets up tomorrow, has no memory of their past. And we know that, a lot of elderly people get Alzheimer's, and we know what that means, right? And we feel sorry for them because they can't remember who they are and where they come from. And we see how this impact on their daily lives. So why are we willingly obfuscating and diluting and distorting the culture of African children in the West, right? So we're willingly putting them in a state of amnesia, and we have to look at that and we have to address that, and that's what this book is about. Right? Hopefully you'll get a copy. You'll, go on my website, Culture Transforms, and send me a link, so I can, your data, so your information, so we can stay in touch so that you can know what I'm up to. And as we go deeper, and my podcast comes out where we'll be discussing this in more depth. So thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to having more conversation with you about this topic. Let's see if I can leave you with some more gems before we sign off today. I want to leave you with this little bit here. Adinkra symbols can be considered ideograms. An ideogram is a symbol or graphic representation that represents an idea or concept rather than a specific word or sound. It is a visual symbol that conveys meaning directly, often bypassing the need for language or spoken words. So this is what an Adinkra symbol is. It's an ideogram, okay? And this is why it's when we say ideogram, we mean that it's a psychological tool, right? If used correctly, we can use Adinkra symbols to transform children's lives in a positive manner, to help them to overcome and to deal with crisis in their lives. So this is why I wrote this book. It wasn't about ego. It wasn't about gratification. It was about making a difference for young people, young Black Americans, Black British, Black Jamaicans, kids on the African continent who are still studying the African curriculum today, the Western curriculum, rather than their own culture. All right? So when you see yourself as an African, or even as an Asian, holding the Western culture above your own and seeing it as more important or more intelligent or more whatever, you're thinking, and undermining your own culture. If your own culture is good and fair and righteous and is doing things correctly, then you would be undermining yourself and your identity. And this is what I am addressing. Ideograms are commonly used in various writing systems, including logographic and pictographic systems, in contrast to phonograms, which is the English alphabet. Okay, so my book goes into all of this. Okay, this book is worth reading and worth promoting and sharing with your friends and families. Okay, all right, we want to get this out there. I need your help to get this book out there so that people can read it and learn how we can transform the lives of kids everywhere, but particularly Black children we're still at the bottom of the attainment gap for the last 50 years. If you think that's fair, don't share this video or like it. But if you think that there's something wrong with that, please make a comment, share, and like this video. Thank you for your time. And once again, don't forget to check my workout on culturetransform.com. Okay? Okay. Bye.